Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining early, and thank you for being here. While we give every other person that might want to join about 1 or 2 minutes, can we probably use the chat to say where we're joining from? Yeah, I think where we're joining from is fine. So we have an understanding of the spread of people joining today. My name is Abimbola, for those that don't know. I'm a co-founder for The Better Tribe, and I have the speakers we're going to have for today are ready. So we've got Tomi and Bola on the call already, but I'll do proper introductions later. I think I'm going to start early because we haven't got a lot of time and we've got a lot of questions. So anyone that wants to join will catch up with us as we go along. I've got a couple of housekeeping. Please, can you stay on mute if you're not speaking, and if you're not asking a question, so that we reduce the interference in the recording. And also, can you please use the chat if you've got contributions, maybe to something someone is saying, or you want to ask a question, can we please use the chat? And we plan to, so this session is planned for 90 minutes, depending on how the question goes. We'll see where we're at 60 minutes. And if anyone needs to drop off at that point, that's absolutely fine. We can send you notes of what happens in the last 30 minutes, because I know some people have asked me that question. Okay, so I'm going to run through the agenda quickly. So I'll do the welcome, and then we're going to have two speakers. We're going to have Adebola Oyiloye talk to us for 10 minutes. And then we're going to have Tomi Ashuri talk to us for 10 minutes before we delve into the Q&A. I would please ask that if you've got any questions, if you can keep them till after the speakers are presented, just drop them in the chat as you think of them. And if they're not already part of what we've captured, then we will add them to the list of questions. And thank you everyone for submitting questions before this session. And then we're going to move on to the panel. I'm going to invite a couple more people to join the panel to help with answering the questions. We'll do that for 30 minutes, and then I'll share again how you can connect with the Better Tribe for 2 minutes, so that anyone that needs to drop off at least gets that information before they go. And we'll keep on with the questions until the end. So hopefully that works for everyone. So just a little bit about the Better Tribe, in case this is your first time coming in contact with us. We're a community of people who are interested in creating opportunities and helping especially African immigrants to thrive in the UK. We're open to any other nationality, but that is our starting point. The three things that we look to do is to help you evolve because there's a different way of thinking and living. The culture is different from where you're coming from, wherever that is. And so the level of information that you have helps you to make the right decisions, to then thrive and become successful, or to get the value out of the decision you've made. We share information around how to help you grow, what experiences we've had in growing, so that together we can be better. You know, so if this is the first time you're coming in contact with us, we're happy that you're here today. And we hope that you connect with us on one of the platforms that we have, which I'll share later. So without taking too much of our time, because I know the hour would fly by, I am going to introduce to you our first speaker, Adebola. So Adebola and I have worked together in previous organizations, and she's a passionate coach. I've seen the effect of some of the work that Adebola has done, and I'm really excited that she's able to join us today to share of some of her experience and some of the tips that she thinks would be useful around writing CVs, getting the kind of results that you want from the CVs that you pull together. So I'm not going to read what's on the screen. I'll leave that on there. But then can I just welcome Adebola to take the mic for about 10 minutes and talk us through some of the tips that she's prepared.
Right. Thank you so much, Abby. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me, Abby?
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
We can hear and see you.
Okay. Right. I think you need to stop sharing before I can share.
Okay. All done for you.
Hello, everyone. While she's shutting that one down and I'm coming on. Hope everyone is good. It's a lovely evening. I went out briefly and it's so dark, so I don't like it. But I'm glad I've got a break from my usual routine to something different. Abby, give me a thumbs up when you stop sharing and I can, fantastic. Okay, so let's go. Let me know when you can see as well. Can you see?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. 1 second. Let's see. Share screen. Right, that one. You see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Amazing. Okay. All right. So thank you so much for the intro. My name is Bola. She said, I've been around, recruitment now for around 20 years-ish in the UK. So my first degree was in cognitive neuroscience and psychology, and my second degree was in organizational psychology. And after that, I didn't know what to do with myself. So I did a stint in the recruitment with a recruitment agency, then worked as an organizational consultant, then into project delivery. So now I work as a project manager lead, really focusing on capacity and capability. All right, so people development. So what am I going to do in the next sort of 10 minutes that I've got, which is a very hard job for me, seeing that I love talking, is to whiz through very quickly the CV. I sat in a CV and I love telling stories as well. So this 10 minutes, Abby, is hard work, but I keep the time, so don't worry. I sat in a CV masterclass today. I just wanted to hear, there was a top guy within my organization delivering one today. So I was like, I've got one this evening, so I better sit down and learn one or two things. But he whizzed through in about 6 minutes. So I should be able to whiz through in 8 more minutes that I've got, seeing that I've talked. But pretty similar in terms of my content is what he also shared. So there is really nothing else to CV. And like Abby said there, where if we're not from here, if you're not from here, getting into employment here, I didn't work in Nigeria, so I don't know. But I hear that the employment, the way things work is absolutely different. So where we'll have, and I've seen a lot of CVs where, there's a lot of stories from people in Nigeria, people coming from that area, trying to really prove who we are, but here they don't have the time. So you've got to make it really clear. So what we're going to do, learning outcome is the first thing I'll go through. What makes a CV is the next thing. I'll talk about CV format, just show us a couple of examples. I pulled STAR in because, whatever you do, either CV or interview, you want to try your best to follow the STAR approach. How CV assessed, we'll talk about that quickly. And then I think at the end, we'll take questions. It might not be at the end of mine. It might be at the end of the second speaker. Abby will decide, but I've just put questions at the end. So I'll whiz through. What am I hoping to achieve in the next sort of 5 to 6 minutes is just quickly talk about how to create a CV that stands out. how you align CV to job description, understand the STAR method, like I said, and then, sort of appropriate languages and content for a CV. Okay, so what makes a good CV? Basically, what makes a good CV, and I had to put that point first because it kept coming to my mind. I sat down, I'm like, yeah, what's the quickest thing I can just say since it's 2 minutes I've got? A good CV, one that really stands out is the one that you've aligned to the job description. So I'll tell you a quick story. When I first started looking for work or jobs in this country, I was so lazy. So I'll just send my CV to loads of places. I just put it and I didn't get any response. And I didn't understand until I got into that space and I realized, see, the first thing you got to do is read the job description. What are they looking for? Try to understand whatever the language in there is, and then look in your CV and align it. Sell you very well. I've said there, sell yourself very well based on what is required and what makes you stand out from the crowd. Clearly market your skills. What do you have? What experiences? What key achievements and qualifications? Make sure your CV is professional. It stands out grammatically, format, and don't let it be too long. Okay. These are CV samples, like I said. And the reason I pull this out in every talk I deliver, if you like, is basically to show you that there really isn't a particular format. And I'm glad the big guy, as I call them, the big boys, today said exactly the same thing. There is no one cap fit all, as they say. It's just a format that is clear is what we need. All right. And I've said here 6 parts to a CV, and I've just pulled these 6 parts because I've worked in this organization that I'm in now for about 6 years, and this is sort of what they use. And I've thought through as well, these are the key things also you want to include in your CV. So at the top there, I've said contact info, make sure they can reach you. I've seen some CVs where people have put Nigeria details, and I'm like, we can't reach that far. So you won't find people contacting you. So you want something they can contact you in. Also, please, email addresses. I've seen some very funny email address, and you're like, we're not gonna, it's just not presentable, so find a nice, presentable, professional email address to put in there. You don't necessarily have to put your home address, I'd say. Just put an email address, your name, contact will be sufficient. Personal profile. I think I've got a sample tonight that I just want to show you. Personal profile is the big thing that will sell you. So that's the first thing we read. That's a high level, quick summary of your, sort of your current role, at least one professional accomplishment, introduce your competencies against the job description again, top line summary about yourself, but make sure the language in there is strong, is confident. I always suggest use I am statement, like I am result driven, I'm a proactive professional, I'm a self-starter who's proficient in, make sure the language in that first part is strong. All right. I've said qualifications, put your qualifications in there. Suggestion is always start with the most recent. And someone asked that question in the session I had earlier. It's, your most recent qualification is good. Key achievements, things that you have done in the past that stood you out. Again, make sure, think about things that probably relate to the job you're applying to, but things that also stand you out, not necessarily in your most recent role. It can be in anything and from anywhere. Talk about your career history very quickly. Like I said about education or qualifications, you want to begin with your most recent career here. For each role there, mention the name of the company, your job title, how long you've been there. Try to highlight what you've achieved. All right, and the impact you've made. What we've noticed sometimes with that career history is people just list the job, pam, pam, pam. But what is the impact? What is the so what of what you're putting? So you can't say, your project leader, okay, project leader doing what? And you did something. What was the impact of what you did? Try to put figures in there as well. Numbers, they always stand you out. Okay, applied knowledge, skills, anything else that can't fit into those areas, put in your applied knowledge. And I've put question mark with hobbies and interests and referees. These days, they're not necessarily necessary. So if you're struggling with space, just take hobbies And someone asked that question earlier today as well. Hobbies, I mean, think about it. What's the relevance? You know, unless it's relevant to the role that you're applying to, then I would probably, you know, save on space. All right, so I told you I have a few examples for your personal profile. I'm not going to read through this, but it's just to remind you of how important that personal profile is my first contact with you as a recruiter. So I'm looking for things that are punchy, strong, confident in your language. I have a clear, you know, I'm proficient, I'm a proactive, I'm energetic, I am highly competent. If you look at the 3 samples that I've got up there, you will see them using that I am statement that is confident. So that's what you want to do with that one. Again, I mentioned STAR approach. If you don't know about STAR approach, please Google that. And I say in every session, Google is your friend. Please look at samples, you know, read up on things, they will help. So for the STAR approach, if you don't know, it's basically the situation. So when you're writing your, especially your career history, you know, talk about, set the scene, describe, and it's based, STAR won't follow for every part of your CV, by the way. It follows more in an interview, but I thought to mention it in this few minutes to you to say, you know, think about STAR whenever you're writing, especially your career history. So set the scene, describe the reason for the job. What did you then do? That's the action. And what was the outcome? That's the result. And I say to people, the extra bonus on this one is you can then talk about your learning from experience. What did you learn from that experience? Okay. And I'm going to wrap up. If I feel like I'm speeding 200 miles an hour on this, but I'm hoping it's making sense to everybody. Just to summarize, to pull it all together, what makes a good CV to me? You want a consistent font. So I talked about the clarity, the professionality, if there is any word like that, of your CV. You want your CV to look professional. You want to use the same font all along through the CV. You want to do that. Usually black, between size 10 to 12, Calibri, Arial, Times New Roman, those are the common ones. The length of your CV, there was a little debate about that one earlier today. I go for 2. So somewhere between 1 to 3. The big guy that I was talking about today said 4. I think 4 is a lot. By the time you're getting to 4 and 5, you want to think about shrinking it, find a way to bring it down. Most employers, from research, from being in that place where we're screening a lot, we only spend about 10 to 20 seconds reading your CV. So keep it brief, keep it relevant. Layout, like I said, simple, clear, use headings, use nice format, bold, make it look attractive. I've talked about read the job description. I can't emphasize this enough. Please read the job description. Don't be like me in my early days of my career. I just shoot CVs out and I never get a response. And that's the reason, if you're the same, that has answered your question today. The reason you're not getting a response is you're not aligning it to the job description. So please read the job. If you don't understand the job description, ask a friend, pick out the keywords. And I talk about keywords as well. Pick out the keywords from that job advert, put them in your CV. You know, think about how, and sometimes this is also the thing, think about how what you've done relates to what they're asking and just align. Language, we've talked about that. Positive, strong languaging, please. It shows confidence. Don't leave gap within your CV. If you've, you know, gone on mat leave, for example, in that period you're doing projects management of children or family, you know, think about what you're doing in that time, or just, you know, make sure there is no gap there. Be honest. I say this a lot. A lot of people will find they write good CV, you bring them to interview, oh my God, they cannot defend what they've written. And you're just like, you know, just if you Google alone, you can understand some of the terms you've put in your CV. So be honest, back up your achievement with statistics, like I've said, keep your CV up to date. You know, because you never know when opportunities will come. Check again. So peer review, get someone else to look at it. No one way to write CV, like I said, but, you know, some elements are consistent across CV. And I think that's me done, Abby, at the fastest speed I've ever delivered this.
Thank you, Adebola. Thank you very much. And I know you're going to get the opportunity to kind of elaborate on some of those points that you've just shared. I think one of the things, your ending point around there's no one way to write CVs. It depends on the organization. I think it's a really key thing. And I also remember my early days. I remember sending out loads of CVs to different jobs and not getting a response until I learned that I had to tailor to each job description. So I think that's an absolutely critical point is, don't just send CV and send it to jobs without understanding how it aligns with the CV. You have to ensure that I think every job description would have what are they looking for in the person that they're trying to employ. So that's where I go to first. So who are you looking for and how do I match with that? So those are really, really very helpful points. Thank you so much for that. And we'll delve into more detail in the question and answer section. So moving on then to our next speaker, Tomi Ashiru-Balogun is a very good friend and mentor. I'm really excited that she's able to be here today. I'm not going to read out her bio. I've just put it on there so you can have something to look at as I introduce her. And she's going to talk to us again for another 10 minutes-ish. I think, Bola, you did about 12. So if I remove the first 2 minutes of preamble, I think you did well for 10 minutes, Bola. So Tomi is going to talk to us for another 10 minutes, and then we will go into Q&A. So we have a lot of questions to run through. But I wanted you to hear from people who actually do recruitment, who've seen so many CVs, have seen what some of the issues are, what some of the good points are, so that we can start off from there. And I think then when we get into the question and answer, we can delve into some of the nitty-gritties of the questions that you've asked. So I'm going to stop sharing now so you can share your screen, Tomi, but thank you. Over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time. Can you just let me know when you can see my screen?
Okay. Not yet. Yes, coming through. Yes. Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So hi, everyone. Thank you again for making the time. I've gone a slightly different way with the ask, but I'll come to that in a minute. So I always think when I have these conversations about kind of explaining potentially why, it might be, I might have a point of view to share. So my background is that I currently lead a team. I do quite a lot of recruitment. Over the last 18 months, 24 months, I must have seen in the region of 200 CVs that have come across my desk. And that's a fraction of the number of people that have applied. And there's a number of things that certain candidates have done that have made me roll my eyes so hard they hurt. A couple of them actually were immigrant candidates, and it wasn't because obviously they wanted the job. It wasn't because they didn't want the job. It was because they just didn't know better. So I've come at this from a slightly different angle, and I didn't think that there was necessarily anything I could add to what Bola has so very well put, because I agree with it all anyway. So I thought I'd come at it as to what recruiters are not looking for in your CV, i.e. the things that are like, come on, So before I jump into that though, and I've only got 2 slides to get on with, I wanted to share this image, and it was one I was thinking about a lot, and I wondered if we perhaps had a bit of an understanding of it. So what's the flow of how a CV gets through to interview, right? And the typical process would be that you'd start off and you'd have a screening stage. So I myself, slightly different experience to Bola. I don't work in sort of HR. I'm kind of in the hiring manager part of this process. But actually the CVs come through the portal, they get picked up by a talent acquisition individual, or in fact, some people automate it, right? And the system is looking for keywords, right? And what's really, really important with that is that either that team, that individual, that system is dedicated to weeding out CVs that just don't match the job description. So first thing, right, again, echoing what Bola said, your CV does need to match the job description. So you might have, and typically we you know, where I work, we might get, if you get 10 CVs come through, about half of them are taken out in the first stage, sometimes more than half. So it is important that, you know, that personal profile, right? The person who's reading the CV at the first stage actually doesn't, they don't deliver the job, right? So the language needs to be clear, it needs to be simple, it needs to be aligned to the job description. Otherwise, they don't have the, you know, the understanding or the knowledge to pass it to the next stage, right? It then goes to a hiring manager, which is typically where I get to see it. Now, I again, I'm speaking for myself and perhaps a few friends and colleagues that I know. Even while recruiting for a role, my day job doesn't stop, right? So I'm delivering my normal job, and then I have CVs that come through my desk, and I have a bit of an SLA, you know, in the back of my head where I need to get out CVs review within a week. And so what typically happens is, wait, this is being recorded, right? Just know exactly how many, how direct to be, but I will be candid. I probably review a CV. I probably spend no more than 5 minutes per CV. And that's if I'm interested in the first page, right? If it doesn't make sense in the first page, it's kind of, you know, I don't think this is gonna work out. And it's little things like, if the job description says, I'm hiring a project manager, ideally you want to be saying in your personal profile, I am a XYZ project manager. Okay, attention is grabbed. I then kind of move down the page. And so it's really important that the information kind of leads the individual down the page as you go through the CV. Then you get into either additional screening or additional or interviews, and then you get into being selected for the role. So typically you might have 10 CVs come through typically, and you might, you know, have a single role or two roles, and you might actually only end up interviewing 2 or 3 people. That's a 30% success rate, right? Based off of the CV alone. So just kind of putting that into context as to why this is important and why it is relevant. So I'll move on to, and the way I've come up with this list is the things, this might reveal more about me, right, than it does about others, because it's the things that really annoy me on CVs. Spell check is free. First thing, right? If you, and genuinely, you know, this is genuinely, again, how some recruiters will think. If you haven't taken the time to spell check your CV, why should I take the time to review it? That's a very direct statement. I understand that that's kind of like, whoa, I get it, but like, this is a transaction, right? So that's really important. Grammatical errors. So incomplete sentences, sentences that don't make sense. I'll give a quick example. I read a CV from an individual who had just completed a master's program in the UK. The individual was African, Nigerian, actually. And this individual did the opposite of grammatical errors. It felt like they took a word and put it through a thesaurus and then got out the most complex version of that word to form a sentence. Now, back to my point of recruiters probably have limited time, right? I'm reading the sentence and I don't understand the words. I don't understand like what you're trying to tell me. And it then kind of leads to, you know, not really having confidence in that person's ability to communicate. Because what a CV does as well is demonstrate your ability to communicate really, really important points in a concise manner. I wholeheartedly agree with Bola. Anything more than 2 pages, and it's kind of getting into the, into the too long space, unless it is a very detailed, very technical CV, which I have seen and, you know, which are relevant. The other thing I've seen with regards to line spacing is dense paragraphs. Now, visually, if it looks like a novel, the reader is put off. And so what you want to do basically is you want to get to a point where, you know, you're almost kind of getting the reader to carry on reading just off the fact that it is visually appealing. So in people trying to, okay, I got to follow the 2-page rule, I'll reduce my line spacing and make it really dense to like 0.5 line spacing. That's quite frankly headache inducing for the reader, right? And then date of birth. It kind of just gets people in different kinds of minds. You know, this person is a bit older. What have they done? They're a bit young. They might not, you know, it kind of leads to the kind of bias you don't want. So let's get rid of date of birth. I've seen this one before as well. Someone repeated the website to me in their personal profile. So our vision statement is improving quality of life. And in their personal profile, I can't remember now, it was something along the lines of like half of the website was pretty much on that personal profile. There is tailoring, and then there is tailoring. That's kind of one step too far, if you see what I mean. Irrelevant experience. If it's experience that starts to kind of talk to the fact that, you know, you've done this and you've done that, it could dilute your capability in the area in which you're applying. Just really think about it. I say that with regards to sort of experiences that just don't line up. But there is also something to be said where you can peel back experiences and look at the skills that were applied in those experiences and use that. I'm keeping an eye on the time. I think I've just got a couple of minutes to go, so I do apologize. I'll rush through the rest. There's another one I saw, again, just giving you examples. This person had just graduated uni and they put about 10 years worth of experience on their CV. I was like, make it make sense, please. Like, I don't know where to take that. So again, if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't feel right, the way I like to think about it is the first stage is a bit mechanic. That whole talent acquisition review is a bit mechanic. Machines don't make decisions. Machines don't hire people. People hire people, right? So you want to get through to a place where your CV is in front of someone who can make a rational thinking, logical decision. Yeah. And that then helps them to sort of, and obviously then connecting with them through the CV is the way then to kind of get them to make a positive decision in your favor. I think Bola mentioned the next two. Sometimes people just describe the tasks they've done as opposed to the outcomes. There is a fantastic book called The So What Principle. It's a really good book for management consultants in particular, but it's a book that kind of helps you whittle down the important gist of a message. If people can get their hands on that, it's a really good read. It's only about 40 pages. It just really helps you condense information. I'd say anything more than 2 pages, language too complicated to understand, like I said before. A CV without a personal profile, I'll explain what that does. You basically are wanting me to do the work, right? Of working out the descriptor of who you are. Yeah, so you're wanting me to have to read through all of the CV. I think you should work the other way around. Think about it as an elevator pitch, like why you in 4 sentences or more. And then I'm then interested, and then I can go through the rest of it. Passive statements. I'll give examples. I supported, I was involved in, I helped, right? You really want to use active language. I led, I designed. It's very kind of direct. It explains what you did in that situation. It explains also what your capability is if you are put in a similar situation like that next time. I genuinely think I've run out of time. I hope this has been helpful.
Thank you so much, Toby. This absolutely has been helpful. I could see myself in some of the points you were talking through. So if you were seeing me smiling It's not because I'm feeling grandiose and, you know, on top of I've gotten my CV. I could remember examples of the errors I made. So I would tell you one story. So I think the first time there was a job advert I saw from, so I'd always wanted to go back into consulting. So I saw a job advert with PwC, and they used the acronym SME. And coming from where I was coming from at the time where I was, I just did that quick, small, medium-sized enterprise interpretation on that. And I wrote this really, what I thought was a beautiful CV, only to find out after I got a rejection that they weren't looking for small and medium-sized enterprise expert. They were looking for a subject matter expert. So, you know, all of those feelings were coming back as we were talking is, you know, and I think that's the reason why we put this together. It's not because we're trying to make jokes or make fun. It's that we've gone through this process and it was painful. And so when we're sharing our experience is to try to cut the timeline that you have to go through to get to where you want to be. You know I must have written over 500 CVs or sent out over 500 CVs in my time when I was trying to find the kind of job I was looking for. And I know that because when I type CV in my inbox, it comes up with about 2,000 messages about CVs I've sent out, you know. So there is a way to cut that process, and that's what we're trying to get to. So if we're smiling and, you know, reminiscing and remembering some very, very hard and difficult things, I think one of the things you can take out of that is that if you're in a challenging situation at the moment, you're feeling like, okay, how am I going to come out of this? You know, that situation is going to pass. It's going to become part of the story. But how it becomes part of the story is that you take learning from things that you have access to. So for example, this event, you know, so we're going to go into Q&A now, and I've got a couple more people on the call that I'm going to ask them to add their thoughts to some of the questions that we're going to be going through. So let me just share my slide again. Thank you so much, Tomi and Adebola. Those were really, really meaty and quality presentation in a short frame of time. So hopefully the questions are going to help you get into explaining a little bit more of those points that you've raised. Can you see my screen yet?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got, let me just check my list again for, I think we've got Enito D on the call. He's going to be joining the panel to answer some of the questions. And we've got James as well on the call. And I've got my able volunteers, Fumi and Kemi, who will chip in as we go. So we've got quite a number of questions, and so we're just going to start. So the first question says, and I hope this has been answered. So the first question says, what do recruiters look for in CVs? What attracts companies in CVs? Well, a couple of questions actually. And what are recruiters and hiring managers seeking? So what I did was we had quite a number of questions and I didn't want to ask all of them. So I kind of pulled the ones that were similar together so that we can try to answer them in a concise way without repeating what we're saying. So I think you've answered this question, but if there was anything, if there was a short answer to say, you know, what are recruiters looking for in the CV? What is the hiring manager trying to find? What would that short answer be? I can remember something you've said, but either Bola, Tomi, if someone asked you that question, you know, what's the hiring manager looking for? What would
I
be
think
that
from
short
my
answer that you can give?
perspective, Abby,
Yeah.
it will be a CV that's got the keywords to the job advert. So the person that's got the skill that I'm looking for or the experience that I'm looking for. So I would say, you know, if I'm going to make it really short and then give Tomi the chance to also chip in, what are recruiters looking for in a CV? A CV that looks neat, you know, and one that is aligned to the job that I'm looking for. So one that's got the experience that we're looking for.
Thank you, Bola. Do you want to add anything to that, Tomi?
Yeah, I guess I'm looking for someone who I can find out more about. I'm looking for the hook, if that makes sense. So something that's relevant to what I'm looking for, but enough that makes me go, I want to understand how you achieved X. I want to, you know, something that makes me want to talk to you. And that kind of is what gets people over the threshold into interview.
Great, thank you both for that. And I think that's a really good point. I think, you know, thinking about the hook, I think when you were talking previously, you talked about using active verbs and not using passive language, you know, so writing things in a way that someone wants to ask you more questions. You know, the reason why you get an interview is that and the hiring managers looked at your CV and they're like, okay, so I want to know more about this and this and that and this, you know? So how do you pull together a CV that makes the hiring manager want to meet you in an interview? You know, so I think that would, thank you both for that. Second question, best practice for writing your CV for an interview, best practice for writing your CV to a particular job role. I think we've covered this already. So if someone wants to hear maybe something slightly different, if you put the question in the chat, maybe ask it differently if you think that we haven't quite answered this. I think we've talked about, you know, tailoring to the job description, making sure you're using the keywords, making sure it's readable, it's presentable. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to this.
Can I just jump in on this really, really quickly? So more than likely, the hiring manager has written the job description, like literally written it themselves. They know that job description. Yes, use the keywords, but maybe not verbatim.
Yeah.
So that's just an important one.
Yes, absolutely. You don't want to write the vision of the company on your CV, expecting that no one would notice. You know, so there's tailoring and there's over tailoring. So just be appropriate enough to be read as authentic. Great, thank you. How to tailor my skill sets into different job titles. I think I would appreciate if we just talk a little bit more about this. So I think one of the challenges that we face as immigrants into a different country, culture, way of doing things is being able to translate some of your experience into what the recruiter or hiring manager is looking for, especially with roles that are not like they're looking for a doctor. You know, if they're looking for a doctor, they're looking for a doctor. You know, it's kind of, I feel like some jobs are easier because there's just one type of thing they're expecting you to know how to do. But some jobs, I feel like it can be quite tricky to translate your skills and experience if you haven't got a lot of experience in that space or you haven't done that role in the way that it's been painted. And I wonder if there was anything to add on here in terms of what are the ways, you know, that people can think about the experience in a way that it comes across. They're showing the skills that they have that could be relevant to that job.
So personally, this is what I'll say, and this is what I've worked with a few people on this. Again, is the first line I think I said in terms of understand what is being required in the job adverts. So what are they looking for? And some people, they will put the competencies, they will put the behaviors, they will put the type of things. Make sure you maybe Google to understand what these things are. And again, I think it's probably, I don't know whether there's any other way other than thinking. And I think this is where what I didn't do at the start, you know, taking the time. Sometimes we're lazy. We just want to send the CVs out. But taking that time to think through what is being asked in the job adverts, breaking the language down in such a way that you understand what is being asked. Once you can spend time to really understand, I was speaking to someone recently on, you know, just taking that through how the experiences and the things she's done is project management, and she did not know. You know, I think, like you said, there'd be another thing could be talking to people. So maybe talking to someone that is already in the corporate world or in the sort of thing you're looking for, to maybe go through that job description or job advert with you and then break down the language. And I think is understanding the language in the job advert is what will help you. Then think through what you've done and then think on how they align. I also say sometimes the other thing that could help you in this process could be using that STAR approach. So write it all down, STAR. What's the situation? How does this relate to what is being asked? You know, but I think the underlying thing when it comes to tailoring your skill is understand the language.
Great, thank you, Bola. I think that's a really good point. And I think the point you raise around having conversations with people in that field, I think that's a really powerful point, because sometimes you overlook some of the skills that you have because you feel like, oh, that's normal or that's commonplace, you know. But when you talk it over with someone that probably has more understanding of that field, they can then help you say, but that's the experience that has been looked for. You just need to tweak the way you talk about it. Tony?
I really, really like this question because I think that in the time we're in, nobody has a single career. You know, I like to think I'm on my second career. So I was a chemical engineer, now I'm a management consultant. So I've actually been through this process of literally trying to change careers. The first thing I did was strip away my title out of my head. So the idea of engineer needed to fall away. And I needed to break it down into the skills that make up engineering, right? And so I started thinking about analytical skills, problem solving, leadership. I then redrafted my CV as a skills-based CV, right? So I looked at those skills. I then went into management consulting, and I basically, again, Google being my friend, Googled the skills required for management consulting. Guess what? Problem solving, leadership, empathy, you know, all of those things. And so I wrote my CV in that vein. I think that's perhaps the most important thing. It's you basically need to write, and it'll be helpful for people to do a bit of research on this. What is a skills-based CV? I'll give a quick example. I had a conversation with someone who was a stock controller in a bakery business, of all things. And, you know, over a couple of conversations, he explained his job to me. And I realized that actually what he was doing was business process management. And over the course of a number of conversations, he now is a management consultant, right? Because that point around kind of having that conversation with someone who is in that line of work, I don't think it can be underestimated at all, because sometimes you're just too close to see it. The other thing I will say on this, just finally, because I have been through this myself, is you can't stop. You can't give up. There are some recruiters that just cannot see it, but there's some that can, right? You only need one to. You only need, I only needed one person to see that within this engineer was a management consultant to be, basically. So it is really difficult, I'm going to be honest, but you can't give up. Times are changing and people are able to see around skills much more than job titles. But the first person that needs to see that is yourself in order to build a CV that reflects that. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tony, for that insight. A business process manager I'm sure when you said that to the person, they were thinking, what's she talking about? You know, but you know that there's power in having those conversations with people who are in that field. And I think the point you raised around making sure that people go back and research around skills-based CVs, competencies, understand what are the competencies that are required for different job types that you might be looking to go into, and understand what is your level of expertise for those skills as well. Because those are really important things to know before you say you want to apply for a job. I think the other thing which might feel daunting sometimes is there's usually a hiring manager on job adverts. You know, you can actually reach out to whoever the contact person is and have a conversation. I know that I found that quite daunting in the early days. I felt like, what if I talk to the person and they're like, oh, I don't think this person is right for the job. And then when they see my CV, they just chuck it. You know, but that also helps because it helps you talk to someone who is close enough to that job that can explain maybe some of the things that you're not understanding. So yes, great. On to the next question now.
I'm sorry to jump in. Can I just when you said skills-based CV, another one I've seen recently, and again, this is from someone who had just moved into the country. There's a CV format out there where people rank themselves on their skills, right? So you'll say, I'm, you know, a 4 out of 5 on Excel. Now, personally, I don't get that, right? Why wouldn't I be a 5 out of 5, right? First of all, so that's a cultural thing, I think, that is done in other parts of the world. It's not something that is done here. You want to put your best foot forward. So just think about whether or not those kinds of things are necessary. You know, if you're 3 out of 5 on problem solving, it doesn't mean you can't solve problems. It just means maybe there's some other problems that you can't solve yet, right? So maybe just think as to whether or not that is valuable.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tony. So the next question is it okay to start afresh in the UK? What are the best routes to take when changing career paths? Career switch without work experience. So I jumbled those 3 questions together because I felt like they were kind of pointing in the same direction around, you know, if you're switching careers, and I know you've talked a little bit about that, Tomi. Is it okay? I think it depends. What we mean by is it okay? If you think that changing careers is the next step for you, then it's thinking about how do I go about it? I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
I could talk a lot about career changes just because I've done it. There's a couple of things that are just practical. You may not have to, but you may have to take a pay cut, right? I took a pay cut because it was important enough that I made the switch. I've more than made up for that pay cut in the time since, but at the time it was difficult, and I'd rather have taken it 5 years ago when I did than today, basically. You might have to, it's a really difficult one. I remember, so again, if you can permit me just really, really quickly, I remember starting on my first day as a management consultant, and there were genuinely these kind of really, really young looking people saying words and using sentences I don't understand, and I was intimidated. What really helped me in that time was what I like to call my support group, right? The people that know, you know, I remember one of my friends saying to me, you have forgotten more about engineering than these people will ever know, right? You're not starting from zero. So it can be very emotionally draining. You question whether you've done the right thing, you worry. So having a support network to see you through at that time, I think, is really important as well.
Great, thanks.
And I'll just add, Abby, because that's where I was going to come in, changing career. So I did exactly the same thing there, Tomi, 6 years, I think 7 years ago, moved from organizational consultancy into project delivery. And like you said, I started, and I said this to someone recently, because she's thinking of changing a career. I said, you know, you might have to start at the bottom. So that's what I did, started at the bottom. But like, you know, like you said there, I was different, you know, and it was obvious. I was different within the business. The kind of questions I was asking was different. And what that led to is quick succession of promotions, you know, and like you said there, that will catch up with where we are now, as opposed to where we are 5 years or whatever ago. But the other thing I wanted to say with when I wanted to change career was I looked for friends that was already in the field. So a very kind, and you said support group, and I agree, because she came over to mine and she worked as a project manager in my house for the day. And I was like, oh, so this is what it is about. You can actually just work anywhere. And that was even more attractive. She came, spent the day with me, and, you know, she took me through, it was all meetings. And, you know, she was just showing me all the jargons. And I was like, yeah, it's, you know, but yeah, that sort of thing. If you can, after that, got work experience. If you can get work experience or shadowing, that will help. If you can talk to the people already in the field, if you have any, or, you know, just find, there are some support groups, definitely, that will help as well.
Right. Thank you, Bola. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, James or Anita or Dee, on this topic. Well, on this question, not topic.
Yeah, maybe something a little bit different, a different perspective, really. Thanks so much for those contributions. I've actually learned, you know, a couple of things myself. In terms of starting afresh, I think it's also depends on the details, really. Transitioning from a totally different field to another field entirely. I think I've had a couple of those conversations with people coming in from Nigeria asking, had 15 years experience, 10 years experience, and thinking of starting from ground zero. And I realize that most of the time when I sit with them to look at their skill sets and their transferable skills, we get to a point where I get to realize that they actually have a lot of transferable skills that are actually applicable in this new role. So in a way, not totally starting from or even getting what experience they had before, but being able to actually interpret those skill sets, those transferable skill sets into the new field they're coming into. You know, I've seen people moving from, for example, a couple of friends moving from sales into IT, and then by the time we went through, they've been into sales with things that had to do with software, you know, and they want to move into IT core. And I'm like, you have a lot of transferable experiences or skill sets that you actually could transfer on your CV or even transfer into the new role. So in a way, it's also about now having to talk to an expert. You know, I think one of the things that was helpful for me coming into the UK the first time was being able to speak to a CV consultant, someone who was able to look into my CV and say, you know what, this is what they call it here. This is what it means here. This is the right word to use here. That these skills can be transferred. So having that kind of opportunity could actually help you know what skill set or what transferable experiences or skills you could actually bring into the new role. And it could be something that could take you, you know, a little further higher than what you could have started with in the first place. So that's what I just said to add to it. Thanks.
Thank you, James. That's a really great point. I think talking to CV writers, I actually had to do that at some point, because I couldn't find the words I wanted to use to write my CV. So I needed to talk to someone that I felt could write it up. And the first time I saw the CV they wrote for me, I thought, that's not my CV, you know. But then I gradually moved from understanding the words that I would normally use to what is commonplace here. So there's some words. So for example, when I was in consulting in Nigeria, you use words like restructure, and you feel like it doesn't have any connotation to it. When you talk about restructure here, it kind of feels like you want to size down the company. you know? So it's understanding the language. That is a really key point, is what language am I using to show the experience that I have, and what is the implication of that language. And when we're talking about language, we're talking about English, but it's the words that you're using to pass across, or to try to pass across the information that you want to pass across. You know, they say communication is not what is said, is what is heard. So it's testing what I've written down. Is it coming across the way I want it to come across or not? That's why it's necessary to do a peer review, or to have someone you can talk to that can say, okay, actually, what this is saying to me doesn't sound like I would want to meet the person because X, Y, Z. You know, there's things that you probably would not see by yourself. For me.
Yes, permits me to also add that even as we're starting afresh or learning from bottom top, it's also important to back up that new learning with a certification. Don't be afraid to go back and start something. If you're going into project management, don't be afraid to go back and start something on Coursera. It's really important. Recruiters do look out for things like that as well. So I just thought that.
Absolutely. For me, that's a really good point. You know, there are a lot of micro courses that people can take to show that you understand the language in a terrain, you know. So it's part of that, putting an effort in so that you can show to the person that is hiring that you are worth the trial. And as Tommy said, maybe not everyone would see that, okay, there's something here, but there's that handful of people that if they come across, they can see the potential in that CV, or they can even see what can be. You know, sometimes it's taking a chance on people, you know, so that's a really, really key point. And also professional bodies, you know, if there are professional bodies that sit in that field that you can join, you can start to learn about the language in that space as well. Okay, so next question. We're going to question 19, and we're still on question 5. So I need to rush now. What may be, okay, so this question was quite interesting. What may be the future of recruitment? How do you ensure you hire the right people almost 100% of the time? I don't think you can hire the right people 100% of the time.
I was about to say that's a difficult one. We only apply this, you know, this criteria that we've discussed today. So we're looking at the CV and we're looking at your experience and skills. And like you said, I think, Abby, we're taking chance. The business, the organization, they're taking a chance on the person. And I know I said this to someone I was working with recently on their CV and recruitment. She applied to pretty much the same job within the same organization. One, she was turned down, the other she got through. And, you know, I said to her, sometimes this process is quite subjective. And so I'm not sure we can ever be 100% certain that we're hiring the right person. We just go by, I don't know, fluke, but no, we just go by the skills and experience.
The evidence in front of you. Yeah. Did you want to add to that, Tommy?
I think everyone said it all. You can't, you know, AI is still not as intuitive as the human decision-making capability. And even with the human decision-making capability, you are taking a risk.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to recognize that both sides of that equation are taking a risk, right? And I think sometimes even organizations forget that the probation period, they're on trial as much as you're on trial, right? Yeah. And so that's your time to decide if this is an organization that you want to keep working for, as well as them obviously making that decision.
Thank you, Tommy. All right, next question. How do I best defend my CV with no or low experience? And then another one, how can I make my CV convert to interviews consistently? I think we've kind of talked to that second question a lot this evening. How do I best defend my CV with no or low experience?
I mean, this is an interesting one because if the question reads as though someone is trying to defend the CV with low or no experience for a job that requires high experience.
Mm.
I can't tell you without filling in the gaps creatively, which unfortunately in my experience will always show up in the delivery, right? So the first question I'll ask back is, you know, if you feel like you have to defend your CV, that phrase, that word itself is an interesting use of word. Are you looking at the right jobs, right? And then if you feel that you are anyway, back into the question 4, i.e. changing career paths, then, you know, we're back into conversations around skills-based CVs, and having that conversation. Ultimately, and this is kind of, I think, really important, you're trying to get through, you know, I think I've said this earlier, to someone wanting to know more about you, someone thinking, you know what, I want to invest an hour of my time and of their time to progress this conversation. And then in that conversation, what you're trying to do ultimately is you're trying to get across to the person that you are the right fit for the job. And the gut test that I always use is this the person, you know, would I personally like to work on a project with this person, right? Are they the right fit culturally? Are they the right fit, you know, capability wise? So it's actually in everything that you come across in the conversation that you have. Say you've gotten through to an interview and you feel like you need to talk to your CV. But the final part I was just going to say is what you need to be doing rather than defending your CV is talking to it. So you are bringing life to what you've written down, if that makes sense. And that's what people are usually looking for in interviews.
Thank you, Tommy.
And I'll just add as well that, Tommy, you could get more experience. So if you feel you're low in experience, maybe volunteer. So look for something that, you know, in the field that you're looking for, volunteer there. And those experiences, they're not little. Don't belittle the fact that it's not a big organization. Whatever you're getting, you talked about creativity there, to me. This is what I say to everybody: be creative in what you're doing, know how to translate that into what you're trying to get into. So go look for somewhere where you can volunteer, in a charity shop, anything, anywhere. And the second thing, whilst you're doing this, or how you can kind of build that experience, is what we said earlier. I think Fumi mentioned, go and get some qualification. So something relevant to the field you're trying to get into, get the experience in there. Don't be afraid to start low. We've said that already. But when you get some qualification, that will help you get the lingo or the language for that area.
Thank you so much, Bola. And I'm really happy that you mentioned the point around volunteering. So I think volunteering was one of the stepping stones that helped me when I moved to the UK. I can remember my first, I'll say, proper job, because that was like one of the jobs I thought, oh, this is a really good job. I think it was the volunteering experience that I had in that helped me get that job. So when you're thinking about volunteering, be intentional about why you're volunteering. What is the kind of skill you want to develop? What is the kind of experience that you want to get? You know, you have to be quite intentional about what you're spending your time on to help you get to where you're going to, so that eventually you can package it up. And volunteering experience is on the same level as paid experience in the UK. So that you volunteered doesn't mean that it is lesser experience in the UK. It took me a while to get to that point. I think that was just quite liberating, because when you volunteer here, there are responsibilities. You know, there are responsibilities around how you need to compose yourself, the things that you need to deliver. You know, so it is seen as, you know, equal to being paid for it. It's just that you're giving your time for that. So don't think of volunteering as lesser experience. It can be part of experience that you can put in. And if you've got experience volunteering in whatever country you've come from, so I came from Nigeria. I think most of us on the call do actually you know, write up some of the experience you have in there. So when I was in Nigeria, I used to lead the children's church in my faith group. And there were skills around there. It's around managing people, managing the teachers and coordinating children. You know, all of those things, you just need to think. I think it was Bola that said you need to sit back and reflect on, so what have I been doing? What is it that that can speak to the skills that are being asked for here? And if you feel like you have no or low experience, talk about the behaviors. So a lot of job descriptions will ask that they're looking for people with certain kind of behaviors. Talk about that you know about yourself, whether you have it or not, you know, or where you've exhibited it. So those are part of the things that you can talk about. So some interviews, people go off the back of, I think this person has got potential to do this job, so I'm going to let this person, well, I'm going to recommend this person, you know. So be ready to be that person that can be recommended based on the enthusiasm that you bring. You know more about the organization than the person that you're talking to. You know, tear apart their company website, all of their corporate information, you know, talk about it with passion. You know, that shows that you're interested in the organization you're working for. You might not have all of the experience, and you shouldn't even have all of the experience, because the job will become really boring if you can do everything on it without any opportunity to grow, you know. So hopefully that's been helpful for that question. Next question says, what CV type is best suitable for tech jobs? I don't know if we've got any on the call, any Tom D.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
I wonder if there's a response you can potentially give to this question.
Yeah, surely. I've seen no one's talked about tech at all. I'm my name is Enitan Odi. I'm a data engineer, and I work with as a data developer. So what I've noticed, sorry, I tend to ramble a lot. So if I'm rambling, someone shut me up, please. So I'll try to keep this as short as possible. So for technology, basically what I tend to find is it's really, really skills focused. And within my career path, I've had to look through CVs and help to recruit. And surely one of the things I've found is, you know, you need to be able to focus your skills. It has to be skills focused resume. Basically, you know, you have to emphasize all your technical skills. So for instance, if you're a developer, you write with a certain type of language, C# or, you know, SQL, whatever it is, you need to be able to focus that technical skill and emphasize on it. Projects you've worked on, how you've leveraged on those skills to work on those projects, and what you've achieved. I think that's very important. I think Tony mentioned something like that earlier. You have to be seen as someone who's got like a can-do attitude. So what have you achieved? Yes, you've got the skills. Yes, you've got this experience, but what have you achieved? So what that experience, what has it brought about to the business? How has it added to the bottom line of whatever business that it is that you've worked in? So you have to tailor the content of your CV basically to show your proficiency in whatever you know, skill that you've got, whatever programming skill, whatever language, whatever tools you've used, and any relevant certifications. And you have to be able to back that up. So I've seen people, you know, they just read for a certification. They haven't got the requisite, you know, skills in terms of hardcore skills to back them up. And they faff around in an interview. They're able to get a job, but they go on the job and they can't do the job because they haven't got the technical skills, if you know what I mean. They only know the theory part of it. So you need to be able to defend that. And what I'll say, and that goes back to, I think, question 4. I wanted to say something there, but my son walked in at the time. Is you have to be able to, so for tech jobs, for people to be able to, I've surely seen where people have come into this country and they're like, oh, yeah, I want a career switch because IT is, you know, really sells. I've got this friend who's a developer and he makes this amount of money. I want to do it. But they don't have the aptitude. Some of these programming skills need, I don't know, you have to be very good at mathematics, at statistics, and you're not good at it and you want to do that. You have to be ready to actually, you know, you have to love what it is that you do, as opposed to just doing it for the money, because you won't last long in it. And so back to one of the things that Bola said as well. If you need to do that, then shadow someone. If you know someone who's got those skills, shadow them. If you need to volunteer somewhere, it's a company where, you know, they write programs. If you need to do courses on Coursera, Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, put in a few hours a day, 2-3 hours a day for, you know, over a few months. Learn those skills. Make sure you install those tools that will take you where you need to be. And I'm starting to ramble, so I think I'll stop right there.
Thank you, Annie. I think that's really helpful. And as you were talking, I was wondering, Tommy, if tech jobs or technical jobs are probably the kind of jobs that you want to write your technical skills and your proficiency levels, maybe. You did talk about seeing some CVs in that way. It just crossed my mind. I haven't, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes. So you might want to say, you know, for example, you know, I'll use my husband as an example. He's an engineer that deals with software. You know, he will list the ones that I think he uses words like proficient. He doesn't score it, right? He will say proficient at, and he'll list all of his skills. And then the ones where kind of they're, you know, new softwares that he's just about sort of getting to grips with or have just started, he will say things like comfortable with the use of, right? So it doesn't, I'm not a fan of the scoring, I'm sorry, in whatever context. I don't see why I should give myself a 4 out of 5 when, you know, that's left to the other person to score me, right?
Yeah.
But for example, my husband does, he will kind of use different language to demonstrate one where he's expert at. I think he even uses expert for a particular number of bits of software, and then he will kind of downgrade the language to give that relative level of competency.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think I wouldn't want to score myself as well, because I always feel like there's room for improvement. But what if the room for improvement is just in my head, and you know, I might be downplaying my skills. So okay, great. Question 8. It says, how can I overcome anxiety during interviews? Interview techniques, best advice on how to prepare for an interview. So we're straying into interview land now. So any quick tips?
So anxiety at interviews, I'll jump in because I talk to people a lot about this one. The best way that I've found that you can overcome or at least calm yourself in preparation for an interview, whilst you're going towards interview, I'll use the preparation because that's what I want to say is preparation. So I found out the more preparation you can have, the more comfortable you will be at an interview. So where you've taken the time to read the job advert, read the description, you've read your CV, you've come up with your examples. So I say this as well, you write your examples in that using that STAR approach, you've written loads of examples. So, you know, depending on how they've structured the advert, if they've told you what they're looking for, so problem solving, leadership, communication, and influencing, you've looked for those descriptions and you've looked for examples against each of those competencies or each of those skills required, and you've put your examples using that STAR approach, you've gone over and over with it, you've talked to people about it, you'll be quite comfortable when it comes to the interview. And I say to people, when I've gone through those things with them, they might not ask you the question the way I'm asking, but more than likely, because you've got your examples, you'll be able to twist the examples or tweak it in such a way that you can respond. The other thing I think I'll say very quickly, Abby, is don't be and it's easier said than done, but I did this in my last interview, and so because I did it and I still got the job, I've been saying it to everybody, don't be afraid to tell the interviewer to stop and I don't understand, or, you know, can you repeat the question? I've also done this in an interview where I started giving an example. I'm like, no, that example, is not working. So like, I'm going to give you another example because I got to a point and I just thought, right, this one is not going to land me anywhere. So don't be afraid. And the way, I think the only reason I could do that is because I had a bank of examples. So I'm like, this example is not working. Let's go to another one. So don't be afraid to calm it down, you know, and go, can we repeat this? You know, can we repeat this question, or can I give you another answer?
Thank you, Bola.
So if I just jump in with a couple of examples, I'll jump off the back of the last one you just said, Bola. I had an interview recently where I asked a question and this person started answering, and about 3 minutes into this very long-winded answer, they stopped and said, sorry, what was the question again? Which was really interesting because what were you talking about for 3 minutes? So if you need to stop, you know, stop it early, right? And pivot immediately before you lose yourself in that answer and recognize kind of too late. It's a really small one, but smile. Not because you're trying to be friends with the interviewer, because it makes you comfortable, right? You know, just the act of smiling relieves stress. It also exudes a bit of confidence. And then my thinking with interviews is, what's the worst that can happen? Yeah, this is how I get rid of my own anxiety. What's the absolute worst? They don't give me the job. I'm sorry, I'll try again. Right? And I get it, right? Obviously, finding a job is a stressful thing. You want to get the job that you're in. But, you know, if it kind of helps you kind of go, sometimes it helps me go absolute worst case, understand and manage worst case. And worst case is that I don't get the job. Therefore,
I think we've lost you, Tommy. Okay, while we try to get Tommy back, yeah, I think yeah, just having some strategies around. Sorry, we lost you there for a sec.
That's fine.
Froze. Yeah, I was just gonna say, just find some strategies that help you pause. So have a cup of water. That was something I learned really early on, is have a cup of water, and then if you can play back the question wherever you feel like, okay, I might get confused with this question, and just test and say, okay, my understanding of what you said is you're asking about XYZ. Did I get that right? It could depending on who is interviewing, people will take it differently, but you're more concerned about how you're able to answer the question appropriately than, well, that's subjective. I would be more comfortable with answering the question properly than making the person feel like I understand what they've said. So if I don't understand it, I would ask. If I don't get the job, I'm okay. You know, that's the worst that can happen. But I'd rather ask and prevent going down a rabbit hole and then trying to come back up. So that's me. It might not work for other people, but yeah. Okay, so
I was just going to add 2 really quick things that people have done that have disarmed me as an interviewer. They've learned about me before the interview, right? So typically an interviewer is coming to the interview like, you know, from a meeting or something, they've just prepped for it, right? So they're kind of focused in getting in, and they start with, oh, I see you went to University of Birmingham. And I'm like, okay. And that has forced me out of interview mode into person mode. The other thing that people have done that I've quite appreciated is, you know, off the back of that question where you're like, oh, you know, did I get that right? Would you have done anything else? They forced me to engage, and they've taken a question and turned it into a discussion. Right. And in doing that, it now becomes an exchange of ideas as opposed to question, answer. And then lastly, just by finding out about the interviewers beforehand, it just shows that you care.
Yeah.
As well as the fact that, you know, when you ask, you know, someone asked me the other day, I see your company has 26,000 people. I don't know how many people the company has. So they found out more about the company than I do. And I go, oh yeah, they must do. But it's said more about them than the fact was itself. So just a couple of tips.
Thank you, Tammy. Okay, so how can I maximize opportunity during interview? How can I discuss salary package in an interview?
Should I jump in? You just ask. Um, so I guess I'd be careful, with how this one is asked if it's during an interview. Because I suppose you should have seen the salary before you go for the job. So I'm not sure whether doing an interview is the best time. I have negotiated salary in the past and got increase, but this was after the interview, after I was successful. I then, used the point to negotiate the salary and got that percentage increase. So I would say be careful of the question you're asking around salary during an interview.
Thank you, Bola.
I would completely agree with that. In fact, I will take salary discussions completely out of an interview. The only purpose of the interview is for them to want to offer you a job, right? You need to get them in the right space before you start asking questions about salary. I will go as far as to say, if they did bring it up, I would shelve that question as well. I wouldn't respond to it in an interview. I would say something like, and again, it's putting the company on notice, right? Companies think they have monopoly here. I'd say something like, I really want to understand how this interview goes. I'm keen to hear about your experience as well. And I'm sure at the right time, we can discuss a salary package. Not a lot of people do that. Immediately, the interviewer is thinking, okay, I best be on my game as well, right? So I probably will just delete it completely from the interview process.
Great, thank you both. Yeah, I think yeah, after the interview is a better time because at least you've got the job and they're very interested to then discuss the terms. Best strategies for job hunting, how to tailor my CV to the job description. We've talked about tailoring CVs, how to apply, hunt for HR position in an organization. So that's quite specific. But best strategies for job hunting.
Well, it would depend on the role, on the job you're looking for. When we ask best strategy for job hunting, it would be to go on the platforms where the job are placed. So if you're interested in, consulting, management consulting, you look for the companies, look for their recruitment. That's the best way. You've also got CV Library. You've got LinkedIn to look at as well. People place things there. If it's civil service, you've got civil service. You've got recruitment agencies. So those are really the platforms to look for jobs. And then see how, when you find a job that you like or you're interested in, we've talked about, then look at what they're looking for and how you can then tailor that to your CV. I'm not sure about that HR question. I know I get a lot of people ask HR question because when it comes to HR role, it's quite specific in terms of the skills and skill sets. And I notice with HR, you've got to get your experience. You've got to, be a member of the right bodies, CIPD, get your qualifications and things like that, and build your experience and work your way up. So I think that's what I would say on that one.
All right then. Thank you, Bola. That's really helpful. I'm trying to get us through as many questions as we can in the last couple of minutes we've got. What's the best route to sponsorship? How to get sponsorship jobs? How to secure certificate of sponsorship?
Shamelessly asking at the interview. On this one, I would ask. It's because it's such a disqualifier that I might even ask at the talent acquisition stage. There is a register of organizations that do have certificates of sponsorship within the UK. I have a friend who, she will look on that list before she applies. Like, what's the point? And genuinely so. another route is, if you've got the post-study work visa, is to get into an organization that you know can sponsor you on your post-study work visa, ideally having enough time through through probation to pass your probation. And that probation period does need to be kind of pedal to the floor. You've got to kind of ace it, obviously, for them to want to keep you. So in that instance, your probation period is pretty much an extended interview for them to then want to invest in you. There is, obviously, with the announcements by the government in the last couple of weeks, there is obviously going to be changes to this. It would be interesting to see whether salaries increase, commiserate with the new £38,000 limits, or if you know, they then backtrack after the elections. But again, that's, you know, we can discuss about that at a different date. But with this one, I would ask upfront, just to be sure.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. And any questions we don't get to, I think we'll try to write up some answers and publish them on one of our social platforms. This last question, it was intriguing. How to get your dream job. I feel like that is a whole different session altogether, spanning from how do you know what your dream job is, why that's your dream job, and then thinking about, okay, what are the tactical ways to get to it? So I don't know if anyone wants to say anything to that at this session.
I'm going to jump in again really quickly. This is one I'm quite passionate about, and I'd like to hear others' views. I think that the definition, the key thing here is the term dream job, and understanding what that looks like across all spheres of your individuality and your life, basically. But ultimately, I think what is required here is brutal honesty with yourself, right? And it's fine if money is the dream. That's absolutely fine, and we've got to be open about it. If time is the dream, let's be open about that. And then being almost selfishly, you know, clear about where your boundaries are, and reassessing that continually, because what will happen in the workplace always is, I feel certainly that your boundaries are always continually tested. So those are just some things that I'm doing, because this is something I'm trying to achieve myself, to kind of, you know, get to that position.
Right. Yeah, I think I agree. It's exploring what that dream job is. First of all, if you can articulate it, then you can potentially find it. So if you can name it, you can find it. But yeah, I feel like it needs a lot of unpacking. Bola?
And I was just going to add to what you said there, Tommy. When I saw the question in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, that's, like you said, that'd be a lot of work. You've got to, you know, your head down. But it sounds to me like dream job is one where we explore. You keep exploring. And the other thing that came to my mind is, to get your dream job, you won't give up. So there'll be knockdowns and knockouts, and, you know, you just be persistent and head down. What is your dream job? Like you said, what are the things I need? You're going for it. You get the first hit. You go for it again. You keep trying, and exploring different experiences till you get to that point. So persistence.
Thank you so much for all of the answers that I've come across. I know that we have strayed past 90 minutes, which I thought we would not exhaust, but I think we had a lot of really good questions. We still have questions we haven't answered, but I think we're going to pause here today and see how we can get to those other questions. I've just put a link in the chat. It's to a survey, a really, really quick survey, just to let us know how has the event gone, what could we have done better, and just give us some feedback. And also, if this is your first time of connecting with the Better Tribe, there are different ways you can actually link up with us. We're on Instagram. Our handle is @the Better Tribe. We're on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, we post job adverts on that LinkedIn site for people to be able to access. I think every week there's always a new job that you can access. So if you want to join that group, the link is on here, and I'll put that in the chat in a second. And then we've got a website as well. So if you go to the website, you can actually get through to the LinkedIn group. So different ways you can connect with us. If you have any feedback, you can send it through the website. And I would like to say another big thank you to everyone that has stayed through the session. We hope that it's been useful and valuable for you. Sorry we couldn't take live questions, time constraint, but we're looking to run a couple of more events in the new year, where we can have more conversations around the questions that you might be having. But I'm sure you're not going to be upset if I say Tomi, Bola, James, Eni, that if people want to connect with you, they can find you on LinkedIn. So you can find them, anyone on this call, really. I think most people will have a LinkedIn page or profile, so you can connect with them if you have any specific questions that you want to ask. I think they would, as best as possible, give you some audience. So in the last minutes, any final words from any of our speakers to the group?
Starting is daunting. You know, starting in anything, maybe starting in this country, starting in a career. What I've learned along my journey is just to never give up. Don't let them limit you. Don't let them tell you this is how it is. This is what they do. This is how they do it. That's one word that I've not allowed or agreed to, and has helped me in this country. Last thing, if I may, is work hard, please. Work hard. I find a lot of our people, Nigerians, they come and the level of and the quality of the work they're delivering is not the best. So I say to people these days when I'm talking to them, please work really hard. If you work hard, you will shine.
Thank you so much, Bola. Tomi, any last words?
I think all I wanted to say was just echo that it feels daunting. It feels like being on the other side of, on the other side of it is daunting. But I think, with most people and judging from most people's experience on the group, you've done this before, right? You've got this. It might be difficult at the start. But actually, I always find with every new job I get or every promotion, it's like, it actually is fairly logical. Like there's no black magic to it, if that makes sense. So just, have that like level of confidence in yourself. Yes, you might need to reskill. You might need to do different, things differently. You might need to get new language, but actually the core of it, you've got skills that are transferable and that you can pick up again. So even though, yes, you might need to take a step back, you're usually not starting from ground zero.
Great. Thank you so much, Tomi. And last words for me, I hope that with the people that are presented, sharing our stories and our experience as kind of giving you some level of confidence that, yes, whatever it is that you're going through too will pass, and then you'd have those stories to be able to help others along their journey. So it might feel difficult, like Bola and Tomi have said, but the Better Tribe is here to help you with information that helps you make better decisions to get to where you need to get to. But as Bola has said, I'm going to emphasize, you need to put in the effort. You need to put in the effort. Until we probably meet again on another conversation, a chat, or any other platform. Thank you so much and have a great evening. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.